When it comes to reading the Bible, one of the important things that we need to keep in mind is context. So when you're reading a passage, how does that passage fit in with the chapter? When you're reading a whole chapter, how does that chapter fit in with the surrounding chapters and the book as a whole? Also, when it comes to books of the Bible, how does that specific book fit in with the rest of the Bible? And I bring this up because as we get into the book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, one of the temptations may be to kind of skip through it and read through it quickly because there is a lot of repeat material. But I would encourage you not to do that because, again, let's go back to the context of these books. Because what we know is this book, or these books, were written after the exile. So again, let's go back a little bit to our timeline. The kingdom had been united, and then it divides. And then because of the people's disobedience, because they broke God's covenant, they are sent into exile. And so the Babylonians take the kingdom of Judah, and they are in captivity for around 70 years. But then the Medo-Persian Empire comes, and they're now the dominant force in this region. And so after the 70 years of captivity, the people are allowed to go back to the land. So they're allowed to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city, to rebuild the wall, to rebuild the temple. And this is a great work, but there's actually a couple things that are causing discouragement. By this point in time in the history of the Israelites, there are millions of them. But when they go back to Jerusalem to do this building project, there are estimates that maybe only 50 to 100,000 went back, so a very small amount of people. The other thing is this: it was hard work, it took longer than it should have, it was opposed at times, and so there was great discouragement at different points in this building project. And so the author of Chronicles, though we don't know the exact date, again, we know it's written after the exile, and he is writing to encourage them. And he does so in a number of ways. One is he gives the people an ideal to strive for. So what you're going to notice as you read through this book is it's very positive. So take David, for example. Pretty much all of the information that we get about David is positive. So we don't read about some of those bad stories with Bathsheba and different things. Now, the author does not do this just to kind of block it out so the people forget it. No, the people are very aware of King David and how he lived, both his good and his bad. But the author does this to give them an ideal to strive for. And so it goes even beyond David. Solomon is pictured in a great light. The people, there is much praise and worship. There's some great prayers. And so yes, the people in their history had ups and downs, a lot of negatives, a lot of disappointment. Again, that is the reason that they went into captivity, is because they were disobedient. But throughout their history, they did have some high moments. Again, going back to the praise as the ark comes in, as the temple is built. And so a lot of good things actually took place. And so in this period of discouragement where the people may be down, he's saying, hey, let's strive to live like this, the high points of our history. The other is the unity of the people. So again, going back to when the kingdom was divided, it was the 10 tribes in the north and the 2 tribes in the south, and then they go into captivity. But as they go back, the author, he does not say, oh, the kingdom of Judah or the kingdom of Israel. He says throughout, all Israel, or all the people. He wants that division to be no more. He wants the people to be united. Also, the Davidic covenant, this line of David, gets a lot of play in this book. Now, one of the reasons is this: the people, as they go back, they may be saying, why should we hold to this line of David? Weren't they partly responsible for why we went into the exile? Why should we hold to this line and still look for the Messiah from that? That's the reason. The author is saying that Messiah will come through this line. So don't give up on the line of David, because one day when the Messiah comes, he will restore all things and make all things new. And so we see this with Jesus as he comes and he dies on the cross, and then one day he will make all things new and he will reign. And then the last is this: the temple gets a lot of information and a lot of ink, if you will, in the book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. So we see all the preparation that David does for the temple. We see the dedication of the temple. And it goes beyond just the building. This temple, everything is connected to it is the worship of the people. It's the central place of worship. And so we see the hard work of the Levites. We see musicians, we see prayers and praise take place all around the temple. And so again, as you're reading this, remember that context, and I think it will help you to not skip and kind of read quickly through it. But also the book of Chronicles, I've just been amazed at this, how it is so relevant for us today. You know, as we think Christians in America, in the U.S., so divided. And we can learn from this book to be united around the gospel. Will we have differences on different things? Sure. But let us be united around the core issues, around the gospel. Also, let us remember our Messiah, their Messiah, Jesus Christ, how he has come. As we get close to Easter, we celebrate his coming, what he has done on the cross, the salvation he has provided, and then one day we look forward to him coming back and establishing the new heavens and the new earth. Also the temple. Though we don't have the temple like they did, we are still to be people that worship. And so there is revival in these books, there is repentance, there is praise, there is music, all things connected to the church. You know, we've been kind of all scattered these last few years with COVID and disruptions and all this. Again, it is a great encouragement for us to gather as God's people, to sing praises to his name and to serve him. And so I've been very encouraged by this book personally, and my prayer as you go through 1st and 2nd Chronicles is that you will be encouraged as you read about the high points of this people after we just got out of 1st and 2nd Kings and Samuel, where there are so many disappointing things, that you can be encouraged by these people, and we can also apply it to our own individual lives, the life of our church, and my prayer is the life of our nation, the churches around the U.S., that we can be more united and be a great witness and example to those far from Christ.